Why am I rewatching all the seasons of the original Gossip Girl? God only knows. La la la. Are they looking cute and fun and flirty and fresh? Hi guys, hello, welcome, and thank you so much for coming. And also, thank you so much for 105 subscribers. I keep like grabbing my hands like, I don't know who does this, but I'm like blanking. Why do I keep doing that? But I really, when I started this channel, I was like, okay, maybe 20 people subscribe, and in my head I'm like, I could probably fit 20 people in my apartment and we get together once a week and we crochet. Like, what a cute way to rationalize how social media works. But 105 people could not fit in my apartment, and it really brings me so much joy that there are so many people that enjoy doing what I enjoy doing, especially because it's a hobby that is often called like a dying or a grandma hobby, and it just makes me really happy that 105 of you also love to crochet. And so thank you so much, and I just wanted to say that before we jump into the video. So today I am making this bustier. Well, not today, obviously I've already made it because I'm wearing it. Anyway, so jumping into today's video, this is a tutorial on the bustier that I'm wearing now, and I just wanted to say like super quickly, a few things quickly. My cat has the zoomies now, like why? Oh my gosh, Patrice. First and foremost, I am not a professional. I have not even been crocheting for a year yet. My 1 year is in like June. So I might do things that as a professional or someone with years and years and years of experience, you might be like, why did you do it that way? The answer is I don't know. It's just the way that I did it, and I'm happy with how it came out. The second thing I wanted to say is that, you know, in retrospect, just out of personal preference, I wish I had a wider strap. And I do talk about it a little bit in the video why I used these straps, but I just wanted to let you know as an update how I ended up feeling about it, and I probably will, when I find the right ribbon, replace these. But overall, what I wanted to say is that I'm really happy with how it came out. It is so comfortable, like I feel like I can breathe. I didn't show what the the buttons look like in the video, because I don't know, every time I tried to shoot the back, I looked like, I don't know, I just did not look good. So anyway, but everything fits so comfortably. And what I love most about this bustier versus similar ones that I've seen is that it's 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional. It's dimensional. It has dimensions. And what I mean by that is that it actually is the bra. Like, when I've seen these before, and I've even followed tutorials before, one of the first things I ever made was something kind of similar to this, like a crop top. And typically it's flat across, and you can see where the cups are, but the piece as a whole lays flat and it doesn't have any dimension to it. And so with a top like that, like, don't get me wrong, they're cute. Everybody has their own preference, to each their own. I am not throwing shade.
Shade the rusical.
All I'm saying is what I don't like about those is that you would typically wear a strapless bra, which I am anti-strapless bras, because the entire time I'm wearing it, all I'm thinking is it falling down? Is it going to be around my waist? They just kind of sit flat. And I almost want to, like, part of me wants to put in pictures to explain what I'm saying, and part of me feels like that would be really shady, so I'm just going to assume that you know what I'm talking about. But what I really like about how this one came out is that, like, you can see, like, my boob. And maybe that's not a plus for everybody, but I love that, like, this is the bra. Like, I don't feel the need at all to wear a bra underneath it. I feel supported. I feel like it looks cuter. I like the way that this hugs, like, almost corset-y, which is to me what a bustier is. And so that's why I made it myself. That's why I kind of like drafted the pattern the way I wanted to. All right, I'm gonna stop talking because you're not here to listen to me talk. But please give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Give it a subscribe if you want to make something with me again. I just realized that person has dish. I didn't know you could do that in an apartment. Where was I? Thumbs up, subscribe if you want to hang out again. As you can see, I'm already into the winter. I mean, I'm over the winter. I'm into the summer stuff that I actually really wanted to film the final shots outside because when I started making this, it was literally 60 degrees, and then the next day it was 30, and I've been waiting for it to get warm again, and it's just not happening. So that's why I film the shots inside, which is always uglier, but whatever. But coming up, I have a lot more like spring transitioning into summer stuff. So yeah, subscribe if you want to see that. Leave a comment below because they make me feel really good about myself. I'm like soliciting good feelings, like please. Anyway, I've said this a million times, but I'm going to stop talking now. Please, stop talking to me. If you make it, tag me on Instagram. I never use my Instagram. But if you make something I made and you tag me on Instagram, I might cry. Yeah, plug. Okay, into the video. Goodbye. Thank you so much. I'll see you later. I'll see you next time. We don't have to talk. I'll see you again. Okay, so jumping right into the materials, I used Cotton Cream by Loops and Threads. I love it because it's soft, because it's like 10% nylon, but it's a little more firm because it's like 80-something% cotton. And I wanted a little bit of firmness for the bustier so it could hold structure, but it's not like super stiff. And it's like $7 a skein, I think. And then I used a 3.75 millimeter hook, which is again smaller than they recommend for the yarn size, but I feel like because it was smaller, it again gave me that stiffness. I got buttons that match for the back. I got all of this at Michael's, by the way. And oh, I only ended up using the one skein. I bought two, but I only used one. And then I bought two different ribbons, neither of which I was really thrilled about. So the one is a satiny ribbon, not this one. The wider one is like a woven material, I guess, and then the other one is satin. I was aiming for like something sheer, but they didn't have that, so whatever. Okay, so you're gonna start with a slip knot, and then you're gonna chain about 2 inches, anywhere between 2 and 3 inches, and this is for the bottom of the cup. I did 14 chains, and I'm like between a B and a C cup, and basically I just like a wider base because I like the way that the cup forms that way, rather than starting with like a 2 chain base like a lot of other cup tops do. So this is my 14 chains, and you can always add more or do a little less. So now we're gonna go down for our foundation row, and I decided to do the griddle stitch for this top, which is simply single crochet in the first stitch, double crochet in the second stitch, and then single, double, all the way down. I am aware that usually people say it needs to be done on a certain amount of stitches or whatever. I found that if I just kept the pattern, single, double, the stitch still ended up looking really nice. So I don't know, I didn't follow any of those rules. So here I am at the end, and now I'm just going to chain 1 and turn my work. And now I'm going to start my increasing rows. So I'm going to increase in the first and the last stitch of each row. And when I increase, that's putting 2 stitches into 1 stitch. So I'm putting a single crochet into the first stitch, and then right after the single crochet in that same stitch, I'm doing a double crochet, and then moving on to the next stitch, I'll do a single followed by a double followed by a single. You get it. And then I'm going to go to the end, and I will meet you there to do our last increase. Okay, so this is the very last stitch, and I'm going to increase again. So the next stitch of my pattern was supposed to be a double, so I'm doing my double, and then I'm increasing by following that up in the same stitch with a single. Now I'm going to chain one, turn my work, and I'm going to keep doing these increasing rows where I increase on both sides until the cup reaches my mid bust. Okay, and this is what I mean by mid bust. So it's about right in the mid of my bust, or it's at least in the middle of where I want my cup to be. So now I am going to just add about 1.5 inches or 2 inches of rows without increasing. So I'm just going back and forth with my griddle stitch pattern until I get the height of how tall I want my cup to be. And here is my cup. So I've reached the height that I want it to be. And now I'm going to go and add a row of single crochets, only single crochet, around the cup. So when doing this row, you're going to chain one, and then you can choose where to place your stitches. The more stitches you add, the flatter the cup will lay, and the less stitches you add, the more curved in it will be. So I want it to have a little bit of a curve because I want it to be my supporting bra. So I decided to only put stitches in where I saw a double bar. And that's what I mean by a double bar. So I'm going ahead and I am just doing single crochets all the way around the cup. And again, it's up to you how many you want to add in, or how few, or whatever. Okay, so you can see here that the cup has a shape to it, and that's because of the amount of stitches that I decided to put in. And I do recommend counting those stitches. I'm going to chain one, cut and pull through and tie off here. And the reason I recommend counting is so your second cup has exactly the same amount of stitches and they are exactly the same cup. So once you have one, just make two. So now we're going to connect our two cups and create the little triangle piece that goes between them. So I take 2 stitch markers and I place the stitch marker on the stitch where the cup tapers towards the bottom. So right where it begins to taper, I want to put my stitch there and then count how many stitches that is on the border and place my other stitch marker on the same exact stitch on the other side. Okay, so now we're going to put our slip stitch on our hook and we are going to slip stitch into the first stitch on our border at the top. And I always pull my initial loop too tight, so I have a hard time doing that slip stitch, but whatever, we made it. And then grab your second cup and slip stitch together into that first stitch there. Okay, so now we need to slip stitch up one, and this is our turning stitch. So now we're going to turn our work and place a single crochet between the slip stitch, like into that slip stitch. And now that we're on the other side, we're going to slip stitch to connect, and then slip stitch up as our turning stitch. And turn our work. And now we're going to go across and continue our griddle pattern. So one single crochet, one double crochet, and continue the slip stitch method of slip stitching to join and a slip stitch to turn. And now we want to start increasing so that we create that triangle and the cups sit where they're supposed to. So in that first stitch is where I'm going to increase. So I'm going to make a single crochet, and then into that same stitch I'm going to put a double crochet. I'm going to continue across. I'm only increasing on one side. It's always going to be an increase on the first stitch, not the first and last. So I just slip stitched to join, and now I'm slip stitching to turn. And so when I turn my work, now I'm going to increase on this side. So I'm going to put my first stitch in, and I'm going to put a double crochet into that same stitch as well. And I'm going to continue down the line. And so from here until we hit the stitch markers is where I'm going to increase in the first stitch after turning, and then slip stitch to join, slip stitch to turn, and I'm going to continue this pattern of increasing all the way until the stitch markers. So now that I'm at the stitch marker, I'm going to slip stitch in to join, and then instead of slip stitching up one and turning, I'm actually going to chain one, turn my work, and go and meet the other stitch marker. Now that I'm at the other stitch marker, I am going to slip stitch to join as per usual. And then this is actually where I tie off. So I am going to chain one, pull through, and cut the yarn and tie off here. Okay, so you can see all my long, ugly tails thus far. And now what I'm going to do is take a stitch marker and put it at the bottom of the cup. And some people think this step is redundant because you can just see the bottom of the cup, but I never can. And I just like to count. I count everything. So I'm putting the stitch marker at the what I believe is the first row, the base of the cup. And I'm going to do that on both sides. This way I just know when I start my side panel where I'm going to stop. Okay, so you can see here that I have both my stitch markers in, and now I'm going to take the yarn and tie on at the first stitch at the top. Okay, so you're just going to slip stitch into the very top stitch of your border that you made. And now I chain as long as I needed to reach the middle of my back from my armpit. So you can kind of hold up the bra, like put it on as if it's a, I don't know, just a front half of a bandeau. Create a chain and then pull it to your mid back, because this panel is going to wrap all the way from, it's like about your armpit, like the side of your torso, all the way until the back, and then the two panels will connect in the middle of your back. Okay, so this is my chain, and again, this is definitely a number that you want to write down so you can make sure that you make the same exact length on the other side. And now I'm going to go all the way down the chain to the bra piece, just continuing my griddle stitch. So the single crochet, double crochet, single, double, single, all the way until the end, and then I will show you how we connect. Okay, so to join the side panel to the cup, very similar to what we've already done, we're going to slip stitch into our border that we made, and then we're going to slip stitch once more to turn, just like that middle piece. No increasing or anything, you're just going to turn your work and continue the griddle stitch pattern all the way down, chain one, turn, come all the way back, and continue slip stitching to connect and slip stitching up one to turn. And you're going to keep doing that until you hit where the taper begins, and I'll show you why. So I will meet you ahead at that point. Okay, so here you can see that the curve of the bra, the cup, is starting to curve in. That's where it tapers. And because we want our panel to sit evenly, we have to add stitches to make up for the space between the straight side panel and the curve of the cup. So to do this, all we have to do is increase in the last stitch before the cup. So in this stitch, I'm going to place a single and a double into the same stitch, and then slip stitch to join, and slip stitch to turn. I don't need to increase going down the row. I only need to increase right before the bra cup. And for me, I had 3 rows of increasing before I hit my stitch marker. but you're just going to keep doing that last stitch increase however many rows you need to for the curve of the cup until the base. And then when at the base on your first panel, you're going to finish by slip stitching to join, chain 1, and tie off. The chain 1 is the tie off, by the way. I feel like I've never made that clear. The way that I tie off, I'm not sure if it's correct, is I just chain, cut the yarn, and pull super tight. Beautiful. Okay, so now we're going to start the other panel. And the reason we tie off kind of awkwardly on the inside rather than what you naturally want to do is the outside is because for the other panel, we're just going to continue all the way across, and we want our fabric to be facing the same way. So we have to end on the inside because imaginarily we would continue across and turn. So when we do the other side, everything's facing the same direction. I hope that makes sense, but that's why you want to tie off on the inside and not the outside. So then I'm just going to repeat the same exact process on the other side all the way until the stitch marker, and I will jump to that point because that's the only thing that's different. Okay, so I am going to remove the stitch marker and slip stitch to join. And then I want to just go all the way across to the other side. And for the whole rest of basically the top until we add the details, it's just back and forth until you reach your desired length. So I personally like to always hold it up and try it on to see how long I want it to be. Okay guys, I forgot to mention something. As I went, I decided to slip stitch just to join in a few more places, and it's basically just because it had a little bit of gapping that I wasn't fond of. So I just slip stitched where the stitch marker is, right? The green one was over here at the beginning of the cup. And so I decided to also slip stitch at the end of the cup, and then obviously repeat at the other side. So slip stitch between the triangle and the beginning of the cup, and the cup and the side border. So just at those 3 extra points across, and that just made everything sit a little more even. And then you just go back and forth, no more slip stitching. Just continuing the griddle stitch pattern until your desired length. Sorry, I forgot to take a video. I'm sorry. Don't hate me. And voila! Look how pretty she is. This was actually the exact length I wanted. Maybe I would have added one more row, but as you could see, I'm almost out of yarn, and yeah. So now we're just gonna go and do a border all the way around to kind of make it, look clean, crisp, and together. And while doing this border, I'm also going to create my button loops on one of the sides. So to make the button loops, the first thing I like to do is place my buttons just so I can eyeball how many I want and how many loops I'm going to need to make. And then do a little bit of math. So I went and I counted how many stitches the row would be. So let's say that in order to do a single crochet border, this would take 20 stitches. I'm not sure that that's what it took. And then if I had 20 stitches and I want 5 buttons, that means that I have to have a button every 4 stitches. Does that make sense? Yes, no, maybe so. So you would just obviously do that for yourself and whatever, how many you want and need and whatnot. So to make the buttonholes, it's super easy. All I do is chain 4, skip 1 stitch. So I'm going to skip the stitch next to that chain, and then I'm going to single crochet into the following stitch. And that's literally the buttonhole. That's it. And I wanted one right at the bottom and right at the top, so I made my first buttonhole right off of that turning chain. So then for the amount of buttons I wanted, which ended up being 6, my pattern was 1 buttonhole, 4 single crochets. And then after my 4th single crochet, I just chained 4. Skip the stitch next to that chain and single crochet into the following stitch. And there you go. You can see my buttonholes. Now you might have to chain more if you have bigger buttons. You might have to chain less if you have smaller buttons. As many chains as it would need to get around your button, but I wouldn't make it too big. Otherwise, you might not have that security. So I just made my last buttonhole into the very top, or I'm doing it now rather. So I'm chaining 4, skipping a stitch, and then into the very top of it, I'm putting my final stitch of that side panel. I have all my beautiful buttonholes. It's really that easy. Beautiful. And now I'm just literally going to continue single crocheting all the way across the top until I reach the other side. So guys, I have to be honest, in my original vision, I was going to go down the other side, but I ran out of yarn and I decided it would be okay without having a border on that side. So I luckily made it all the way across the top though, and I am just going to do my chain up of 1 and pull through to tie off. And here she is! See like how beautiful that top stitch just pulls it all together and makes it look nice and pretty and neat and unified in unison, unilateral. So now we're just going to add our detailing. So to add your buttons, you're going to need string or yarn. Preferably you would want to use the same yarn that you were working with. However, I found that my needle that fit the yarn was too big to fit the buttons. So you're going to see in a second that I actually don't use that. I use embroidery thread that I had, but you got to use what works for you, whatever. So all I'm doing is just sewing the buttons. There it is. There's the embroidery thread I was talking about. Okay, so all I'm doing is sewing the buttons directly across from the buttonholes, and there's really not too much I can teach you here. The only tip that I do have is to put your top button and your bottom button in first. So I'm just inserting my needle through the fabric and then putting it through the button, and I did like maybe 3 or 4 loops around and tied off. My fingers were too sweaty to pull the needle. Embarrassing. But I just keep it as straight as possible. put the needle in through the other hole. Is there a fancy way to put on buttons? I don't know. And then I, again, just did about 3 laps of that so it's sturdy. So here you can see I already put in my top button and my bottom button. And the reason that I do those 2 first is because it will just guarantee that everything lines up properly. I feel like sometimes if you just go from the bottom to the top, once you get to the top, you realize things are a little wonky. So if you do the top and bottom first, it will definitely help. Okay, look how beautiful. No, like really, this looks pretty beautiful. I was glad I went with the buttons, and I'm glad I did so many because it's definitely secure and sturdy and safe, and I also think it looks really nice with a lot of buttons. So now we just have to add our straps. So a wider strap will provide you more support than a thinner strap, but I did end up picking the thinner straps purely because I preferred the look of the satin over whatever that other material was. So I am going to go with the thinner straps. And I recommend when putting your straps on, you try on your top and place a stitch marker where you feel you would prefer your strap to tug. I don't recommend just putting your straps in the middle, because I always find that not only looks a little awkward, but never feels right either. So I tried the piece on, and I put my stitch markers where I felt the strap would go, and then I also placed a stitch marker in the back where I felt the strap should end. And I always do it on one side and then count and mirror it exactly on the other side. That way everything is perfectly even and none of it was guessing, because every time I guess I'm wrong. Okay, so now I have all of my stitch markers in, and I'm simply just going to sew in the straps, but I will show you a little bit on how I do that. So I do recommend keeping your tail long, because if you have a short tail, it will always flop up. And additionally, if you want more support, you would sew down further on the tail, and it will provide more support. So I'm just going to thread my needle like normal. And then I just sew back and forth, just a flat bar stitch, nothing fancy. The only thing that I recommend is constantly checking what the front of the piece looks like. The way I placed my needle was almost like through the middle of the stitches so that you couldn't see my sewing from the front. And the one side I did, you could, so I scratched it and redid it. So I just always recommend looking from the front. And then I kept my ribbon nice and long because I'm planning on tying bows, and I just cut it off. And then I repeat that same exact process for the other 3 stitch markers, keeping long tails, sewing the bars as far down as I feel would give me the support I need. I thought about putting a little bow in the middle, but I thought it would look too much like a night set, so I didn't do that. And I'm just going to repeat that same process. This is what my stitching looks like. She looks strong. Can't see it from the front. Looks pretty good. And that is literally it. That is the whole top, guys. Look at how stinking beautiful. I do recommend making this in lighter colors. I just think the pattern shows up better on a light color, but I think they are so cute. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you make it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.